So the Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro has called the U.S. action sending Venezuelan migrants down to the mega prison in El Salvador a kidnapping. What does the State Department make of that classification?
What I can tell you about is first, you don't want to speak about the nature of either diplomatic conversations or comments, the nature of what another country has said or the status in that regard. So I don't want to remark on that so much. But what we can say is that certainly the Secretary of State has been, he has tweets, he's a very open guy. And we've spoken about the nature of what Venezuela has done, the nature of the Maduro regime, and that there's a reason why it's not an accepted regime. Certainly, we don't recognize Maduro as the legitimate leader of that country. So there's a lot that Venezuela's got to do to generate certainly some goodwill, or at least to behave like a regular nation would behave. And that includes, of course, the nature of accepting more migrant flights, repatriating their own citizens back to Venezuela. And they need to know that that is something that's not negotiable and that there's not going to be any reward for this kind of behavior. But I think that the world understands that about Venezuela and Maduro, as does the United States.
Staying with Venezuela, so a group connected with the Venezuelan government has now created this website for people to report what they're calling unjust deportations of Venezuelans. State Department's reaction to that?
Well, obviously, America, through the State Department and through President Trump's policies, is going to do what is best for the American people. And you've got illegal aliens here, illegal criminal gangs, the TDA gang, certainly, MS-13 regarding El Salvador. We are not going to allow the continued criminality, the destruction of Americans' lives, the creation of cities that are generally unsafe, allowing people who should not be here in the first place, let alone organized criminal gangs, but are also certainly with Tren de Aragua, is recognized as a terrorist entity. So we're going to move these people out. There is no expectation of a right to be in this country. Certainly when you're here illegally, you are not entitled to stay in this country. And other nations, most other nations understand this. And Secretary Rubio's been working with other countries to accept their own citizens back, to repatriate their own citizens. We've got a great friend in El Salvador's President Bukele, who is willing and has accepted now third country individuals into their prisons to help the United States facilitate making America safer and more secure for American citizens. And so this is a generally recognized framework when it comes to a country's citizens. And in this particular kind of an instance, is accepting them back is a demand of the United States. Secretary Rubio's made that clear. Again, this is not a negotiable framework, and that's what we're doing right now.
Moving on to the graduate students and the college students that are facing deportation after participating in protests on campus. What do you make, specifically looking at Mahmoud Khalil, former graduate student at Columbia University, what do you make for people who say the First Amendment does apply to green holders?
Well, sure. Let me just say that this is not about speech. This is about actions. Right? If you have somebody who comes and wants to get a visa, and we ask you, there's a standard about what you're going to be doing here. If you were to say that you would come here to vandalize buildings, to stop instructions at major universities, to occupy buildings, trapping on occasion staff members who are unable to get out, if you were to have said that you were going to be advocating on behalf of Hamas or any other terrorist group, we wouldn't let you in. And the green card is an extension of the ability to have gotten into this country, to have told us what your intentions are, who you are, what you're going to do. And again, we never would have let you in the first place. And so once you get in, if you're going to engage in actions that clearly are putting people at risk or are breaking the law, were not disclosed to us that was your interests, advocating for a terrorist group like Hamas, we are going to take action. And this is something Secretary Rubio has made very clear. So whether it's a green card or that it extends from your efforts to get into this country and to be a part of this country, if the United States deems that you've been acting in a manner that is against our national interests, is involving issues of crime, or that you lied when you came into the country, every nation, every sovereign nation has a right to determine who comes into their country and who, if they're not a citizen, doesn't get to stay. There's no again entitlement framework for what happens when you get here. The United States government is in charge of the nature of what happens here, and certainly the Department of Homeland Security is involved when it comes to removing people from the United States. But the standard of what we expect, it's kind of a decent basic standard that every country expects, which is you tell us the truth of what you're going to do here. And if we find that that's a problem, and we're dealing again, not with speech. This is not about about ideas. This is about actions. And that's what we're acting on as well.
How does the State Department differentiate between individuals who are pro-Palestine and pro-Hamas?
Well, I think that you can see certainly in the protests after the obscene massacre of the 1,200 Israelis on October 7th, and the kidnapping of over 250 people, the wholesale slaughter on video of babies and of children and of women being murdered as they're being raped. I mean, these are horrific, disgusting, obscene events that were meant to shock the world, were meant to show a kind of barbarity. I don't know, that was what maybe supposed to make us afraid and retreat. I think that there's a lot of demonstrations and behaviors, especially when you're looking at the nature of Jew hatred and anti-Semitism, and that kind of dynamic is what we saw in the immediate aftermath of October 7th on many different campuses. And of course, there are people, understandably, we're all concerned about what happens in Gaza. The loss of innocent life has been, and dealing with creating peace and ending these wholesale slaughters is a hallmark of this administration. President Trump has clearly made peace his goal. Secretary Rubio is following that vision so we can stop this kind of madness that has gone on for generations, not just in the Middle East, but in certainly other places. The work to have a ceasefire with Russia and Ukraine is also at the top of mind and being worked on as we speak. So when we think about protests and Gaza and the nature of what's happening in the Middle East, I think the protests have spoken for themselves, and people who are genuinely concerned about the Gazan population and Palestinians, they have Hamas to blame for the condition of their lives, for this constant suffering that goes on, and America is in the lead trying to stop it.
What do you make about the argument by some of the protesters, by Mahmoud Khalil and the most recent protester from Georgetown who have been moved to Louisiana, calling that move from New York, from the DMV down to Louisiana, being held in the detention center down there? They're calling that retaliatory by the U.S. government against them and considering themselves as political prisoners. Reaction to that?
Well, that's absurd, right? I mean, we are a land of law and order. It has been made very clear by the Trump administration, by the Department of Homeland Security, by the vote last year by the American people that we wanted the chaos to end. We wanted certain standards about what we put up with, and that if you are a visitor to this country, or if you are a gang member, or if you're a criminal, illegal alien, the days of you being able to wander around this country without any repercussions are over. So, and if you are going to take actions, and again, this is about actions. I was on the left for a very long time. I was the president of the National Organization for Women. I led many demonstrations. None of them involved invading buildings, doing graffiti, getting people trapped in buildings, holding people, spouting Jew hatred, chanting for a terrorist group that has murdered 1,200 Jews. It's a remarkable difference. That never was categorized as protests. All right, that is something quite different. And if there are elements of that break the law, we are going to act. There's no free card that you can do whatever you want. There are very basic very basic standards for all of us. And that's what we act on. And of course, if in deporting you or in arresting you, arrests involve being detained. I know that might surprise some people, but that's what happens. And it happens to people every day. And people make choices. And then, of course, we've got the greatest justice system in the world that will adjudicate that. And that's what the American people voted for during the election last year.
Yeah, but was it necessary to move them all the way down to Louisiana? Being detained is one thing, but where they're detained,
I think that being detained is the point. I don't think that when you are detained, it necessarily matters, especially when you're dealing with a dynamic that involves your status in the country and the nature of what the effort is to address your status in this country. You're going to go where the law enforcement framework or the Department of Homeland Security deems is the best place for you to go. Working within all legal parameters, of course. Being detained means that your life does change, and the choices you're able to make change, and that you're not free in the same way that you were when you were at home. That is what happens when you do things that require an arrest and the legal system to determine that you should be detained.
One last question for you, and we appreciate your time. It looks like an early legal win in regards to these deportations of protesters, getting the case of Mahmoud Khalil moved from New York to New Jersey. The State Department's reaction to that, and do you see it as a sign that these cases could go in the favor of the Trump administration?
Well, throughout this whole process, I haven't discussed really the legal details of any particular case. This is a posture that is about everybody who might think about breaking the law in some fashion, who, again, is here in this country either illegally, if you're a gang member or a criminal, or, of course, if you're here on a visa as a guest of this country and you're taking certain actions that result in your arrest. I think that no matter what it is that's happening, we know that if there's a move, I'm not going to speak on a specific case at all, but we'll watch this play out. And the good news is that everyone involved knows that they're in the best country in the world with the best legal system in the world, and now one that is operating with the fate and the safety of the American citizen in mind.
Is there anything else you would like to add before I let you go?
Nope, just thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.